Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most unique, entertaining, and compelling sports talk podcast you'll ever listen to.
Let's be great. Let's be great.
Wendell's World in Sports with the one and only Wendell Wallace.
Giannis charging down the lane to the rim, double clutch, no good, tipped in. Giannis tipped it home.
Subscribe, rate, and review anywhere and everywhere you listen to this and all your favorite podcasts. And now, from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Rip, Roaring, and ready to rumble, Wendell Wallace.
And welcome to Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. A lot of things to discuss today in the world of sports. Bonjour, bonsoir, monsieur, mademoiselle. Je m'appelle Wendell Wallace, Wendell's World in Sports. So glad that you could be with us. Good morning, good abend, Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Konnichiwa, shalom, wassalamu alaikum, my brothers and sisters. Namaste, Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Que pasa, mi amigos, mi amo, Wendell Wallace, Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Just giving you a YouTube version episode of what I normally put down on my audio podcast, Wendell's World in Sports. Before I start talking about what's happening in the NBA, before I get into what happened with KD, before I get into what's happening with James Harden, before I start talking about Kyrie Irving and some of his comments about not being vaccinated, despite the fact that the Nets are down without Kevin Durant, going to be speaking about what's happening with the Memphis Grizzlies. Are they this season's Phoenix Suns? Going to be speaking about the return of the Klay Thompson returning to the Warriors. What does that mean? Before I get into all of those things, I need for you to do this. I need for you to go to where you listen to your favorite podcast. I need for you to type in Wendell's World in Sports. That's spelled WENDELL World in Sports. And then I need for you to download, to follow, to subscribe, to rate, and review the most unique, entertaining, thought-provoking sports talk podcast that you can listen to. Wendell's World in Sports. Give you about 2 hours of what I'm putting down in terms of the stuff that's happening in the world of sports on my podcast, which is going to be coming out later on tonight or early tomorrow morning, depending upon when you're listening to this, whether you're listening in California, whether you're listening to this in Ontario, whether you're listening to this in Saudi Arabia, whether you're listening to this in Paris, whether you're listening to this in Brazil, whether you're listening to this in Australia, whether you're listening to this anywhere on the planet. Just make sure that I'm going to be coming out with another episode, the next episode of my audio podcast in the next 12 to 18 hours, speaking about what's happening this past weekend on the NFL weekend. You know I'm going to be speaking about them Dallas Cowboys. You know I'm going to be speaking about the Los Angeles Rams. You know I'm going to be speaking about the Cincinnati Bengals. You know I'm going to be speaking about the destruction, which was the Buffalo Bills over the New England Patriots and the Kansas City football team that used to be champions. Kansas City used to be champions over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Taking a look at the next week's playoff games in the NFL, so I got that to talk about. I also want to speak about, I'm also going to be speaking about, once again, NFL head coaches, lack of diversity in the hiring, what can be done, what could be done, is there anything that can be done? So those are the things that I'm going to be speaking about on my audio podcast, Wendell's World in Sports, which is going to be coming out in the next 18 hours. So no matter where you are on the planet called Earth, go ahead and check that out. WENDELL World in Sports. But I wanted to be speaking about what's happening right now in the world of sports concerning the NBA. Taking a look at the current standings in the NBA, the Eastern Conference, you have the Chicago Bulls, the number one seed at 27-14. The Brooklyn Nets 27-15, half game behind. Number 3 seed, the Miami Heat, currently 27-16. The number 4 seed is the defending champions Milwaukee Bucks, 27-19 after losing to the Atlanta Hawks on Martin Luther King Day. By the way, post-grad, happy Martin Luther King Day, year, month, lifetime. The number 5 seed, the Philadelphia 76ers, 25-17. Nope. Ben Simmons still hasn't been traded yet, but the trade deadline is less than a month away. We'll see what happens. The number 6 seed, the surprising Cleveland Cavaliers, 26-18. Outside of the playoffs that are looking in, we have the Charlotte Hornets without LaMelo Ball currently, but a good victory, a devastating victory, an impressive victory over the New York Knicks Yesterday, 24-20 is their record. The Toronto Raptors, the number 8 seed at 21-19. My Washington Wizards. I'm from the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Silver Spring, Maryland, the best place to live, the best place to grow up, the best place to raise your children. Maryland born, Maryland bred, and even though I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, when I die, I'll be Maryland dead. The Washington Wizards, currently number 9 at 22-21. Your New York Knickerbockers, 22-21, a very embarrassing loss yesterday at the Garden to the mellowless Charlotte Hornets. They're at 22-22. The Boston Celtics are 22-22. No. I'm not talking about trading Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum either. Nope. Even though I will say this. When was the last duo? Maybe the Toronto Raptors, probably, where you could take a look and say, when was the last time that a forward guard combination won themselves an NBA championship? If you take a look at some of the great duos in NBA championship dynasty lore, whether you're speaking about Tony Parker and Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili and Tim Duncan, Kobe and Shaq, Kareem and Magic Johnson, Larry Bird and Kevin McHale, whether we're speaking about the anomaly being Michael Jordan with Scottie Pippen, that was the last time you could probably take a look and see a team that was constructed to win multiple championships where they didn't have a dominant center or they didn't have a dominant point guard or some kind of that combination. If you're the Boston Celtics, are you waiting for Jason Tatum, still very young? Are you waiting for Jaylen Brown, still very young, to try to reach the stature where they could be two guys to be the alpha dogs to lead a team to a championship? Now, they had success before reaching the Eastern Conference Championships in consecutive years, or 2 out of the 3 years, one time in the bubble, losing in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Miami Heat, losing to the LeBron James-led Cleveland Cavaliers, losing Game 7 at home. And you're speaking about the promise at that time being great because they were playing without the superstar who was supposed to carry them to a championship and be the cornerstone of winning championships and being the next Celtics mini dynasty, which was Kyrie Irving. He was injured at that time, so it was up to 12-time All-Star Jason Tatum, which was labeled at the time for him to go ahead and even as a young player, a guy who was 19, 20 years old at the time, to lead them to a championship. When they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers in Game 7, everyone was on the assumption that, well, it's only going to be a matter of time before Jason Tatum elevates his game to superstar status. And by now, I'm thinking many Bostonians, I'm thinking many Boston Celtics fans, I'm thinking many people in the NBA would be thinking that as far as the progression of Jason Tatum and where he stands in terms of leading his team to a championship, that he would be farther along than he is right now. So the tandem, the duo, the Batman and Robin of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, with Jason Tatum being the Batman, that they would be further along. They wouldn't be scuffling at 22-22 and having Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown take turns going one-on-one while everybody else is kind of sitting around and watching. And you have Marcus Smart earlier in the season calling guys out, and Al Horford taking some comments about what's going on with this team, and Brad Stevens in the front office and no longer coaching the team, and Emilio Udoka is down there coaching the squad. A whole lot of changes for a team that only a few years ago, especially after the swindling that then president of basketball operations, Danny Ainge, made to acquire so many draft picks. And then there were discussions about the possibility of them getting Anthony Davis when he was still a top 5, top 6 player in the NBA. There was discussions about them maybe going after Jimmy Butler. There was all this scuttlebutt about the time that they were going to cash in the Brooklyn Nets number 1 pick, or the Brooklyn Nets first-round pick that they received from the Kevin Garnett Paul Pierce trade long ago, that when they were going to finally cash that in to put them over the top to start winning championships. Danny Ainge made his play for that move by acquiring Kyrie Irving. Well, to say the least, it didn't work. But from that rubble, what was supposed to be the next Celtics dynasty because of the way that they were set up by the moves and actions and acquisitions and trades made by Danny Ainge, you still had from that rubble Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And as of the 2021-2022 season, we thought that this team was going to be farther along, but it hasn't. So the Boston Celtics are scuffling just a bit, underachieving just a bit. Your discussion, your thoughts, your opinions. Wendell's World in Sports the YouTube episode. My name is Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us talking about what's happening in the NBA, speaking about the current standings in the Eastern Conference, moving down from the top 7 teams, which are the Chicago Bulls, the Brooklyn Nets, the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Philadelphia 76ers. Still don't have Ben Simmons on the team. The Cleveland Cavaliers, the Charlotte Hornets, the Toronto Raptors, my Washington Wizards, the New York Knicks, and the Boston Celtics. Bottom of the Eastern Conference, we have the Atlanta Hawks, who still can't play any defense, even though it was an impressive victory at home against the Milwaukee Bucks on Martin Luther King Day. The return of DeAndre Hunter might improve their defensive status, but I saw them a little while ago on the road play against the Los Angeles Lakers, who had an impressive victory. I might say probably, maybe, possibly their best win of the season as you think about the Lakers, their victory over Utah. But I saw them play the Atlanta Hawks. I saw them play against the Lakers about, a couple of weeks ago on ESPN. And speaking about a team that just was not interested in playing any defense, that was the Atlanta Hawks. Maybe the trade of Cam Reddish to kind of shrink their rotation and not worry about trying to play guys, and Cam Reddish trying to justify the number 1 pick and all those type of situations. Now that's not on the table for Nate McMillan and the Atlanta Hawks, and then they're achieving Atlanta Hawks team, who are currently 18-25, followed by the Indiana Pacers, 15-28, the Detroit Pistons, 10-32, and the Orlando Magic at 8-36. So that's the Eastern Conference as far as the standings, as far as the looks, as far as some of my opinions I have toward that. So basically here on Wendell's World of Sports, the podcast with yours truly, Wendell Wallace, the YouTube episode of Wendell's World of Sports. What does the loss of Kevin Durant mean for the Brooklyn Nets? Well, what sources told ESPN, the Nets diagnosed Durant with a sprained MCL on his left knee. The franchise expects a 4 to 6 week rehabilitation before his return. Durant underwent imaging on Sunday morning, this past Sunday morning, after Saturday night's injury. The realistic benchmark for Durant could be a return following the All-Star break, which is between February 18th and the 23rd. This is what sources say. The organization will, of course, err on the side of caution when it comes to Durant's return. I'm not saying that this is a blessing in disguise, because when you're losing somebody like Kevin Durant, the man who was in the lead, the man who was the front runner overtaking Steph Curry in terms of the MVP race is concerned, I know that Kevin Durant, and I know that Brooklyn Nets fans aren't really too concerned about the MVP for Kevin Durant and that type of thing. But as far as the level of play that he was at, and the importance that level of play meant to the success of the Brooklyn Nets, to lose him for 4 to 6 weeks is tough, it's rough, but in retrospect, let's take a look at the glass half full type of scenario with Kevin Durant going down. The man was playing some major minutes. The man was playing every single game. The man was not interested in load management. Kevin Durant was going to play as many games as possible and still average somewhere around 36 and 37, 38 minutes per game, which he was doing before he was injured this past weekend. Maybe this is a time when you're talking about missing 4 to 6 weeks that he can not only heal his knee that was injured, but also take some of the wear and tear off the 33-year-old in terms of the amount of minutes and the responsibilities that he had. If you take a look at the Brooklyn Nets, the Nets, as we saw last season, they don't need the one thing that many people say when you're speaking about a team needs to win a championship, or what the chances of a team winning a championship. How do you increase the chances of a team winning the championship? One thing the Nets proved is that, you know what, that old adage about these guys need to play together, and these guys need to get a certain number of games and a certain number of minutes and a certain number of possessions under their belt so they can build chemistry and they can build trust and they can build a situation where they know each other's games so they can work as a cohesive 3 or a cohesive 5 in terms of the importance of what they're doing on the basketball court. The Brooklyn Nets last year showed you that, we don't really need to do that. As long as we got Kevin Durant, as long as we got James Harden, and as long as we got Kyrie Irving relatively healthy, we'll be all right. So Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and James Harden barely played together for any significant amount of time, for any average amount of time And if you take a look at what the Brooklyn Nets did in the playoffs, despite the fact that Kyrie Irving was injured, despite the fact that James Harden was far at even 70% playing percentage in terms of his effectiveness is concerned because of injury. And you saw how close that Brooklyn was to making it to the Eastern Conference Final, where playing against the Atlanta Hawks, I'm guessing that they go ahead and they beat that squad before going to the NBA Finals and ultimately probably losing to the Phoenix Suns. One thing that we don't have to worry about is the amount of games that James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving are going to be playing together. Now, there's another situation that I'm going to be speaking about with the Brooklyn Nets concerning the situation with Kyrie Irving not getting vaccinated and what type of impact is that going to have. But along with the Brooklyn Nets, along with the trio of Durant, Harden, and Irving are together, then it really doesn't matter. So the 4 to 6 weeks, as long as Kevin Durant can come back relatively close to being 92, 95, hell, let's even put it at 97.6543872438%, then this latest bump in terms of what the Brooklyn Nets are doing as far as trying to reach their goals of winning a championship, which going into this season, many people of expertise on the NBA predicted that would happen. I still think that's intact. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So doggone glad that you could be with us speaking about what's happening in the NBA. Did you see this stuff coming from Mark Stein via Adam Herdeman of NBC Sports Philadelphia about James Harden is looking to be on the move again, possibly, maybe. There's a discussion, a move for Harden, James Harden, currently now with the Brooklyn Nets. A move for Harden may not be out of the question for the Philadelphia 76ers because, quote, there is enough noise circulating league-wide about Harden's reported openness to relocation this summer. Harden has a $47.4 million player option for 22-23. He could opt in with Brooklyn for next season, but they're also speaking about a guy who played the majority of his prime with a Houston Rockets organization and squad that everything's centered around him, not just on the basketball court, but also off the basketball court. There's concerning some of the perks and some of the nice little goodies in terms of team rules he didn't have to follow with the organization, and the situation where the Houston Rockets basically were run by James Harden. Yes, I know one of the Fertitta brothers actually is the owner of the squad, and he's the one that's going to be writing the checks. And I know that Daryl Morey at the time was the one who made the move to put the players around for James Harden, with James Harden's acquiescence in opinions and thoughts on the matter in terms of who comes and who goes as a player with the Houston Rockets. But Daryl Morey also ultimately was the one who made that decision, and Mike D'Antoni was the coach. So when I'm speaking about James Harden running that franchise, yes, he wasn't the check writer. Yes, he wasn't the one on the phones making the moves. And yes, he wasn't the one drawing up plays in the timeout. But you could basically say that James Harden ran the Houston Rockets organization, and he did for damn near a decade. Well, now that he's 32, 33 years old, even though he's having a pretty good season while being not in the ultimate playing shape, the next move that James Harden is going to make, where he can be the focal point and have the same type of freedom that he had when he was with Houston and still be contenders for a championship, I don't see where that exists. I don't see where that's going to happen. If, for instance, he goes to the Philadelphia 76ers, he's not going to be the alpha dog on that team, or he's not going to be the face of the franchise. He's not going to be – that's Joel Embiid. That's Joel Embiid's team. So James Harden, just like when Oscar Robertson was traded from the Cincinnati Royals to the Milwaukee Bucks to ensure that then a guy named Lou Alcindor, who later changed his name officially to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, would make sure go ahead and win himself a championship. James Harden is going to be brought to the Philadelphia 76ers to validate, quote-unquote, the process, that long process that the Philadelphia 76ers, that long and arduous and horrible process that the Philadelphia 76ers had in terms of ultimately winning a championship. They missed with Ben Simmons. They missed with Martell Fultz. They missed with Nerlens Noel. They missed with a couple of other moves that could have been made. Everything could have been salvaged. Everything could be salvaged if they could go ahead and get themselves James Harden, bring him over, pair him with Joel Embiid, and have those two be the Batman and Robin with Joel Embiid playing the role of Batman, James Harden playing the role of Robin, and then those guys go ahead and win a championship. Save Sam Hinkie and save Brian Colangelo did to start the tanking process, but the legacy of Sam Presti will be written maybe a little bit more differently if the acquisition of James Harden ultimately leads the Philadelphia 76ers to a championship with Joel Embiid being the guy still playing at an MVP level right now. That's what James Harden's role is, to ensure that the process was worth it and Joel Embiid wins a championship. That's a role that's quite different. That would be quite different for James Harden in his career. So it'll be interesting to see if he even goes ahead and does that. Plus, you have to also take a look at his earning power. As I mentioned before, a $47.4 billion option for 22-23. He's a 9-time All-Star. And if he opts out of the contract, he's possibly looking for a bigger long-term payout. Since if he opts out or if he plays out his contract, the next contract might not be as big as he would hope. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Took a look at their game. If you remember all of this stuff that's coming off in terms of the KD injury, in terms of reports and rumors and innuendos that James Harden possibly is open to thinking about moving, taking his talents somewhere else other than Brooklyn this next offseason. The last dance, the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers, James Harden and the Brooklyn Nets, the last dance. After all of this stuff that's swirling around, they had their most impressive game of the season when they played against Chicago. Now, I know Chicago's been scuttling a little bit, especially with the loss of Zach LaVine. But, against the Bulls, a game in which the Nets came into the game after losing 5 of 7, the way they put the beat down, the way they put the smack down, the way they put the 138-112 beat down on the Brooklyn Nets, with Kevin Durant scoring 27 points, 17 in the third quarter, James Harden having 25 points, a season-high 16 assists, KD also with 8 rebounds, 9 assists, Harden made 5 threes. Patty Mills had a great game, shooting 6 of 8 from the three-point line, 21 points. In the third game back, Kyrie Irving had 9 points, playing 25 minutes, going 4 of 10 from the field. No free throw attempts and 3 assists, but the Brooklyn Nets, they look good. They look damn good, and it was a statement game because, it was a statement game not only for Chicago to validate their ascension to the top of the Eastern Conference and let the contenders, the pretenders, and everybody else in between know that we are serious about winning a championship, and you need to take us serious about winning a championship with DeMar DeRozan, Alonzo Ball, and Nikola, the squad around them, Zach LaVine and stuff. So this is Nikola Vucevic, excuse me. So this was the squad where it's kind of like, yeah, man, this is kind of like our validation almost in terms of saying that we're legit. I know that many people didn't predict that we would be here at top of the Eastern Conference standing, but we're legit. We're ready to take on the Brooklyn Nets. Maybe not so with the return of Kyrie Irving and the beatdown on the road that the Brooklyn Nets gave the Chicago Bulls coming into the game. As you remember, Brooklyn 4-9 against teams with a 500 or better record on the season. They were 0-8 against the top 4 teams in the Eastern and Western Conference. Remember, at home they were blown out by the Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns. They had lost the previous 2 games against Chicago and lost in double figures twice to the Milwaukee Bucks. So this, even though it's a long season, even though we're speaking about James Harden being in the NBA Finals, Kyrie Irving winning a championship, Kevin Durant winning 2 NBA championships, despite all of the playoff experience, despite all of the experience that these guys had going into this season, still, in a game like this is one of the few games that you're going to be thinking about those 3 guys being on the same team, everything surrounding Kyrie Irving, that we're not going to take the regular season with the seriousness that maybe some of the other teams had. So if we lose a game at home that we're supposed to win on paper, we're not going to panic. We're not going to start being negative. We're not going to start pointing figures. We're not going to start demanding trades. We'll wait till the offseason to do that. But but there are some games where when it's time to show the league, when it's time to remind the league that who we are and what we're all about, the Brooklyn Nets, that was one of those games. And that 138-112 beatdown that they gave to the Chicago Bulls was just don't forget who we are type of game. So now in a situation like this, Kevin Durant goes down. Kyrie Irving is asked about, hey, you know what, man, are we going to Nick Friedell of ESPN, who's a very good writer? I think he does a fantastic job when he's a guest on the Brian Windhorst show on his podcast. So, I don't have any mean things or negative things to say or criticism to have about Nick Friedell in terms of what he asked Kyrie Irving on Monday night after Brooklyn lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers 114-107. Kyrie had his best scoring game since his return, scored 27 points on 12 of 23 shooting, 3 of 6 from the three-point line, 9 assists, 7 rebounds, a plus 14 plus minus in 38 minutes. James Harden had 22 points, 5 of 12 shooting, 10 of 15 from the free throw line. But the Nets missed 5 straight shots down the stretch. We're still within the game at 110-107 when Harden turned the ball over for a breakaway dunk that kind of sealed the game. Darius Garland had 22 points, 12 assists. So after the game, Nick Friedell and Kyrie kind of went back and forth a little bit. Well, basically it was Kyrie kind of making a little bit of sense to Friedell, who basically asked, why don't you just shut up and dribble type of question when asking about Irving getting vaccinated. And with the loss of KD and your need now because of COVID and everything else, players missing games and everything else, do you feel now with KD out in the lineup for 4 to 6 weeks that now this is your time to go ahead and be there for the organization, to be there for your coaches, to be there for your teammates, your brothers, and all those type of things, to go ahead and get vaccinated? And when you get vaccinated, it's the akin to Clark Kent running into the phone booth and putting on the cape and taking off his suit so he can reveal that he's Superman and fly through the air to save the days, that he can leap tall buildings, so he can leap tall 7-footers in a single bound, that he can shoot 3-pointers with the efficiency of Zeus, whatever the fuck that means. But on the exchange about that, first of all, let's hear the exchange in what Irving said, and I'll go ahead and give you my thoughts and opinion on it. This is the exchange between Nick Friedell and Kyrie Irving.
Do you feel any more pressure to change your stance because Kevin's going to be out potentially for a couple months and the team needs you?
See, that's what I feel like ends up coming into a lot of this culture of basketball and sports and entertainment is you bring in the team and you bring in situations that we're in, and Kev's going to heal. Kev's going to be okay, and we're going to have to deal with that as his teammates. But in terms of where I am with my life outside of this, I stay rooted in my decision, and that's just what it is. It's not going to be swayed just because of one thing in this NBA life that somehow is, somehow it's brought to my attention as being more important than what's going on in the real world. It's just not happening for me, and I respect everyone else's decision. I'm not going to ever try to convince anyone of anything or any of that. I just am standing rooted in what I believe in. And though we're dealing with this right now with Kev, I just know that I'm protected by the organization. I'm protected by my teammates. I'm protected by all the doctors I've talked to, and I just stand rooted.
Just to be clear, do you think there's
we got to get one last one. We got Michael Grady.
Do you think there's anything that would sway your decision?
What do you mean?
To get this shot?
Why you keep asking me that?
Because that's what everybody wants to know.
Who's everybody?
There are millions of basketball fans out there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
people who want to know if you're going to take
I'll
the shot
ask
to be
you.
able to play at home.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Basketball fans.
But there are millions of people. Forget basketball fans. There are millions of people.
But this is that's what I'm saying. You're bringing my vaccination status into a basketball game, and it's I live my life majority of the time when I'm away from this. So when I say I'm not getting vaccinated and I'm making a choice with my life, somehow it gets mixed into, well, what about the basketball stuff? It's no, bro. We live in a real world. This is great to be able to do this. I'm grateful for the opportunity, I love being with my teammates. I love playing on the Nets. But I've already been away enough time to think about this, to process it, to be able to make this decision, stand strong, understand that people are going to agree and some people are going to disagree. The circumstances that are at hand, I'm praying that they get changed and we're able to do things differently. And that's not just for me. That's for all those that are dealing with unvaccinated, being unvaccinated and getting fired from work on a day-to-day basis. It's not just about me. That's not been my message this whole time. So though I feel your feeling and emotion for asking that question, it's just like sometimes it feels a little disrespectful. Like, I'm not just a basketball player, bro. I'm not. Millions of fans, I appreciate all of it, but it's not just about the game.
So from the audio, you hear that he would consider changing his, Wendell asked, would you consider changing your stance on getting vaccinated since KD is going to be out a few months? And Irving said that, despite what has happened to Durant, he's going to be cool, he's going to be back, he's going to stay rooted in terms of Irving with his decision not to become vaccinated, that he's going to stay rooted in his decision not to get vaccinated. So Wendell then asked, well, is there anything that can sway your decision about getting vaccinated? And I can understand in that, I can understand the question, but I can also understand Irving's response, where he was like, man, why do you keep asking me that in terms of, am I going to get vaccinated? What can take for me to get vaccinated? What can be the situations? What are the scenarios? Not Tribe Called Quest scenarios, but what are the scenarios in terms of me getting vaccinated? I mean, why do you keep asking me that question? Because everybody wants to know. Well, who's exactly? Everybody wants to know. Well, who's everybody? Name me who's besides you, obviously, who asked the question, and maybe Brooklyn Nets season ticket holders and other. Who exactly are you speaking about? Name names, name people in terms of who's everybody. Maybe there's somebody who's wants me to get vaccinated, whose opinions and thoughts I trust, that I respect, that I will listen to. So start naming names. And Wendell goes, well, there's millions of basketball fans and people who want to know. Well, that's almost a situation where it's almost like shut up and dribble. So bringing his status into the importance of playing basketball, and Irving said that, look, he's been away long enough to be strong in his decision. This time being away from him, as you heard and as you saw in the video, is like, look, I made my decision. This is bigger than basketball. I understand where you're coming from in terms of, oh my goodness, I want you to entertain me. You need to be on the court. You need to win games. I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan. You have millions of Brooklyn Nets fans. You have millions of Kyrie Irving fans. You need to go ahead. You need to do this. And you need to get this done for them. And Kyrie Irving's like, I don't need to get it done for them. There's millions of people who are rooting for me to get the vaccine. They don't know me. They ain't in my life. They don't make the decisions for me. My decisions are based on a bunch of innocuous, I don't know who you are, millions of people. I'm not taking food off their table by me not getting vaccinated. I'm not taking the roof off their head by not getting vaccinated. I'm not having them lose their job because I'm not vaccinated. So why is this big to-do about me getting vaccinated? Look, man, you're speaking clearly from a basketball standpoint. I can understand this. Nick Friedel is a writer for the NBA. He covers the NBA. So I guess for him, it's a lot more enjoyable if you could have a Brooklyn Nets team that could have Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden for the most amount of games as possible, and the fact that just from a competitive standpoint and just being that type of guy in terms of, look, maybe put himself in his situation in terms of, well, if I were you, I would go ahead because, we're speaking about leaving your teammates high and dry, and what kind of person does that make you, and what kind of teammate does that make you? So in terms of maybe Kyrie was thinking about, well, wait a minute, man, by you implying that millions of people and the fans and people who aren't even NBA fans, just a regular general public and Brooklyn Nets and my teammates and my coaches and everything, I'm disappointing them. I'm leaving them high and dry. I'm being selfish. And because of that, and because I won't get vaccinated to help them out, in some way, shape, or form, it's a blemish on my character. Like, somehow, some way, I'm turning into this bad guy because I won't get vaccinated to help out my team because our best player is down for 4 to 6 weeks. And I can understand Kyrie Irving's explanation to say, look, man, this is bigger than basketball, all right? I mean, basketball is what I do. It's not who I am. And what I decided to do was not get vaccinated, and I'll take the consequences of that comes with that decision. Whether it means that you don't like it, or the fans don't like it, or if the general public doesn't like it, or the basketball writers, that's the bridge I'm going to have to cross. You know, that's what I'm going to be dealing with. That's what I'm going to have to eat when you put it on my plate. You know, it's a situation like that. And he made a good point. I'm not going to just shut up and dribble. Because when Wendell was speaking about, well, you know, people want to know, well, who cares? Who cares what people want to know? You mean the same people who, what was it, last season or a couple of seasons ago, were throwing bottles and were throwing objects at NBA basketball players when they were walking off the court to go back to the locker rooms after the games were over and during the halftime shows? That situation, those are the fans. The same fans when they don't like a decision, a personal decision that a player might make in terms of where he's going to be playing the game, where he's going to be employing his talents, that all of a sudden now they're going to burn his jersey. Although it's the same fans that Kyrie Irving needs to be worried about, is that the same group of people that Kyrie Irving needs to be worried about in terms of making a personal decision on whether he's going to be vaccinated or not? Please, that's if would I like to see Kyrie Irving be vaccinated? I really don't care. It's up to him. It's his decision. He's a grown man. He can make his own decisions. I don't know who Kyrie Irving is as far as the person is concerned. I've never met the man. I don't hang out with the man. I don't speak to the man. I've never traded thoughts and opinions about life with the man. My existence will go on the same whether Kyrie Irving plays basketball, gets vaccinated in the next 25 seconds, or doesn't get vaccinated at all, whether he retires from the NBA, whether he takes a rocket ship and lives the rest of his life on the planet Mars. It doesn't matter to me. So it's Kyrie Irving's decision. I mean, would I like to see him play? Sure, I would love to see Kyrie Irving play. Who wouldn't if you're a basketball fan? Kyrie Irving is a brilliant basketball player. He's a genius in terms of with the ball in his hands. But he's more than just a basketball player. Kind of went all the way back to when Sandy Koufax was pitching in the World Series, and on the day that he was scheduled to pitch, he didn't pitch because of Yom Kippur. And he was like, look, I know that we need to win a World Series, but my faith is a lot bigger than a baseball game. Well, that's the way it goes. That's the way it is. So, if Kyrie Irving wants to do that, hey, let Kyrie Irving do that. Wendell's World in Sports, the podcast. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. So, if you're speaking about the Brooklyn Nets moving forward, and you're speaking about the logjam, if you're speaking about some of the top-tier teams in the NBA, how much faith do you have in the Chicago Bulls? And moving on now with the Brooklyn Nets, let's just say, for instance, that Kyrie Irving gets vaccinated and he's going to play all the games. Or there's a situation where he just plays the most important games and the Brooklyn Nets organization just pays the fine for Irving going to work in the city where you have to be vaccinated. I don't know if you can actually do that, but there was some talk that the Brooklyn Nets might actually do that if that's an option. Or it's a situation where, who knows? Basically what I'm saying is I think the Nets, with the trio of Kevin Durant coming back, playing at an MVP level, James Harden getting back into shape, getting back into ultimate shape, and then playing at a high level, and then Kyrie Irving coming back, I still think that the Brooklyn Nets are the favorites to come out of the East. I don't give a damn really what Joe Harris does, because Joe Harris normally doesn't do anything in terms of any type of positive production on the consistency when the playoffs come around. So this Brooklyn Nets team was built upon Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, and we'll just put some other guys around them. The acquisition of Patty Mills, I think, can pay dividends if that scenario holds true in terms of Durant, in terms of Harden, in terms of Kyrie Irving coming back. So I think with that squad, I think that the Brooklyn Nets are the favorites to win the East and have a strong possibility of winning the NBA championship. Now, if it continues like this in terms of James Harden doesn't get into ultimate shape, even though through 35 games he's averaging 22.5 points on 42% shooting, which is the lowest percentage since his rookie year, and a career low 34% from the three-point line, along with averaging 8 rebounds and 9 assists per game, almost 37 minutes per played in his 35 games. Kyrie Irving as a part-time player, Kevin Durant coming back. Do the Brooklyn Nets mainly relying on a must-win game with Kyrie Irving out and James Harden and Kevin Durant being the man with a Patty Mills with a way past his expiration date as being an effective NBA basketball player, Blake Griffin not getting much from LaMarcus Aldridge, Joe Harris consistently shrinking during the most important moments of a playoff series? Can a team that heavily relies on Kevin Durant and James Harden, with Kyrie Irving swooping in for road games, is that going to be enough for the Brooklyn Nets to overtake or to dethrone the reigning Eastern Conference champion, the Milwaukee Bucks, and beat the challenge of such teams as the Chicago Bulls, possibly the Cleveland Cavaliers, those type of squads? Because if you really think about it, other teams in the Eastern Conference have their questions too, in terms of, Brooklyn with Kyrie Irving in this situation and Kevin Durant being out 4 to 6 weeks. Well, Milwaukee still has Brook Lopez out for an extended amount of time with a back injury. Miami is playing without Bam Adebayo, and Jimmy Butler is in and out of the lineup. When he's playing, he's doing great, but, a myriad of injuries for Jimmy Butler means that he's not consistently there. The Philadelphia 76ers are still dealing with the Ben Simmons situation. Are they going to be making a trade at the trade deadline coming up in less than a month to improve what is a team that is one impact player away from being serious contenders? If Joel Embiid can remain healthy and play at the same level that he's been playing with, both mentally and physically, mentally looking to dominate, not bullshitting, not nonsense, not any of that nonsense. The Philadelphia 76ers, what can they get for Ben Simmons if Daryl Morey decides that he needs to trade Ben Simmons by the trade deadline to get a player back? Damian Lillard is not going to help because he's out with abdominal surgery, so he's going to be missing some time. There hasn't been any scuttlebutt or rumor concerning Bradley Beal moving anywhere. What other player out there can the Philadelphia 76ers acquire for Ben Simmons that can then catapult the Philadelphia 76ers from, I think, just second-round NBA playoffs and that's it status to being true NBA championship contenders? So can Chicago be the Phoenix Suns of the season in the Eastern Conference in terms of outperforming expectations, being one of the elite teams in the league? How much do you put your faith in DeMar DeRozan in terms of him being a playoff contributor of the highest regard to go up against Kevin Durant and go up against James Harden and go up against Jimmy Butler and go up against Giannis Antetokounmpo and go up against Joel Embiid? If you remember DeMar from his days in Toronto, and that was a San Antonio and Chicago time ago, but DeMar had his stumbles in underwhelming performances, one of the reasons that he was available for the Kawhi Leonard trade. But DeMar DeRozan has yet to have an impactful playoff season or playoff series. Is that going to change once Chicago gets into the playoffs? And if they're the number one seed, are they going to be able to do those type of things? So a lot of questions still to be answered. A lot of intrigue. We still have the trade deadline. We still have teams that are going to be buying out. A lot of stuff that's going on in the Eastern Conference. But I still think that it's Milwaukee's conference to win. But with Brooklyn and their situation looming, man, you never know what's going to be happening down the road in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. YouTube episode of what I'm putting down, what I normally put down on my audio podcast, Wendell's World in Sports. As always, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, WENDELL_S World in Sports. You download that bad boy and then you rate, you listen, you follow the most entertaining, unique, thought-provoking sports talk podcast that you can listen to, and the music is just as fantastic on the audio, even better than it is here on my YouTube episode of what I'm talking about, namely about Wendell's World of Sports in terms of what's happening in the NBA. Because of so much talk that I want to get to with the NFL, normally the audio podcast is dedicated toward the NFL, the playoffs and such. The YouTube episodes that I do is going to be mainly ad for right now until the NFL season is over, going to be highly dominated by the NBA, the love of my life, the Halle Berry, the Layla Rochon, the Monica Bellucci, the Selma Hayek of what I'm putting down in terms of the love of sports. If love of sports were women, then you're speaking about the NBA being the top of the top along with the NFL. I like to say that, man, you know, when you speak about the sports that I love the most, you know, it's almost like the guy who is married to a beautiful woman, but because he's a piece of garbage, because he has no morals and he has no values and he has no character, that he's going to be cheating on his wife no matter how beautiful she is. So that's kind of like what I do between basketball and football. You know, the NBA and the Georgetown Hoyas, that's, if I could have the wife on a purely superficial level, it would be Halle Berry around the boomerang time. It would be Selma Hayek when she was walking across the road in Desperado after causing a car crash, even though those women still look absolutely fantastic. It would be Monica Bellucci in the movie that she was in with Gene Hackman and Morgan Freeman, a very underrated movie. It would be Layla Rochon. It would be one of the females, right? But then the NFL, you know, the NFL is what I cheat on in terms of what the NBA is all about. So the NBA, the Halle Berry, the Monica Bellucci, the Selma Hayek, that's my wife. That's right till I die. That's death do us part. But in the meantime, the NFL, that's like my Jada Fire, right? That's like my that's like, those are the women that I cheat on. So when the NBA is going on, I might just slip away a little bit and go, you know, concentrate mainly on the NFL. You know, when the NBA is off on vacation, I'm like, honey, don't worry about it. You go off, you go to Cabo, you go to Europe, you go to Australia, you go to Toronto, you go to Vancouver. You know, you go have yourself a great time. You go back and see the family members and tell them that I said hi. I'm going to stay back because I got some work to do. And as soon as they leave, guess what? The NFL comes right on in and I say, what's up, baby? How you doing? Pack your things. Let's start having the good old time. So that's exactly how I situate. That's how I explain my love of these sports when you're speaking about what is your favorite sport. Is it the NBA? Is it hockey? Is it Major League Baseball? Is it UFC? Is it boxing? Whatever it is. For me, the top two, without question, the NBA, the NFL. How do I pull them apart? How do I separate them? It's not like children in terms of no matter who they are and what they do, I still love them the same. Nah, I kind of like the NBA when the NBA season's going strong, but when the NFL season's going strong, right there, says the NBA out the door. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. The YouTube episode of what I put down. Now, speaking about the Western Conference in the NBA. Taking a look at the top 7 teams, you have the Phoenix Suns at 33-9, the Golden State Warriors, the number 2 seed, 31-12, the number 3 seed, bad loss yesterday to the Los Angeles Lakers. And okay, Rudy Gobert gets dunked on by Russell Westbrook. Okay, if you go for every block attempt, even Bill Russell got dunked on a couple of times. It happens. The Utah Jazz losing to the Lakers, though, 29-15. The Memphis Grizzlies, the surprising Memphis Grizzlies, this season's possibly Phoenix Suns. Memphis Grizzlies, 32-15. The Dallas Mavericks getting back into the swing of things. They're the number 5 seed at 24-19. The Denver Nuggets, despite all of the injuries that they've had, the incredible incredible, underrated play of Nikola Jokic has them above 500 with a 22-20 record. Some of the contenders playing in the play-in game, you have the surprising LA Clippers at number 7 at 17-25. The surprising Minnesota Timberwolves, they're at 21-22. The Los Angeles Lakers finally get into 500. They are at 22-22. The number 10 seeded Portland Trailblazers without C.J. McCollum, without Damian Lillard, a rookie coach in Chauncey Billups, Neil O'Shea, no longer the GM. The Portland Trailblazers are in quite a conundrum because the interim GM, I mean, what are we going to be doing here? How long is this trial basis going to be, and how much power does he have if the time should come for the Trailblazers to start from ground zero and trade C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard? Now, because of the time when the Portland Trailblazers were known as the Trail Gangsters, the Trail Blazers, the time of Darius Miles and J.R. Ryder and those clowns that put a permanent stain, that put a big, huge stain on the Trailblazers organization and the black community in general, by the way those fools were acting. The Portland Trailblazers should be very cognizant in terms of, you know what, we don't want to have seasons where we're at the level of the Orlando Magic or the Houston Rockets or the Oklahoma City Thunders or the process period of the Philadelphia 76ers, because we have a very, very, very loyal and fantastic fan base. And what would that be like to have them be doormats for the next 2 or 3 years? Understand that thinking, but man, where are you going with C.J. McCollum, who's going to be making $30 million for the next couple of seasons, averaging $30 million for the next couple of seasons? He's been out for a while with a collapsed lung. And Damian Lillard now, who you hope that some of the struggles that he had, not just this season, but during the Olympics, were due to injuries that could be healed up and fixed when he goes and has this abdominal surgery and gets all healed up from that. You're hoping that Dame returns to being Dame, but even if that happens, Dame being Dame at his best couldn't get past the Denver Nuggets, missing a couple of guys in the first round of the playoffs. And you're going to be, again, having a rookie head coach in Chauncey Billups still learning as he goes along as their head coach. It's time right now for Jusuf Nurkic, who is having a really good season. Time for the Trailblazers to really think about Robert Covington, Jusuf Nurkic, C.J. McCollum, and Damian Lillard. Those guys need to go the bye-bye route and see what they can do to start building again. So you've got a kid named Chet Holmgren who's doing some things. He might be the number 1 draft pick. I don't know why, but he's a region away in Spokane, Washington, where the Portland, Oregon fan base can have some type of connection with that kid. So if he goes to the squad, then that would be a pretty good start to rebuilding the program. As I mentioned before, though, a guy who's supposed to be graded out as the second coming of Kristaps Porzingis. Are we speaking about Kristaps Porzingis before he tore his ACL this first couple of years with the New York Knicks, or are we speaking about this current version of Kristaps Porzingis? If we're speaking about the Kristaps Porzingis over the last couple of seasons in Dallas, especially when he was being coached by Rick Carlisle, whoever fault it was, I'm going to be passing on Chet Holmgren, but that's another discussion for another day. So we're taking a look at the top seeds in the Western Conference: the Phoenix Suns, the Golden State Warriors, Utah Jazz, Memphis Grizzlies, Dallas Mavericks, Denver Nuggets, LA Clippers, Minnesota Timberwolves, the Lakers, Portland Trail Blazers, and then the bottom of the conference at 18-28, you have the Sacramento Kings. The number 12 seeded San Antonio Spurs are 16-27. Number 13, but playing better, but still 13, the Zion Williamson-less New Orleans Pelicans at 16-28. Number 14, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Eric G's Oklahoma City Thunder, 14-28. And 15 coming in last are the Houston Rockets, 13-32. So when you're speaking about news from the Western Conference and some of the biggest news maybe this season in the NBA, you're speaking about the return of the Klay. Klay Thompson played his first game in 941 days on January 9th on a Sunday at home against Cleveland, 96-82 win. He was 5 of 14 from the floor, 2 of 5 from the three-point range, 17 points in 20 minutes. And since his return, as expected, Thompson has been rusty, been held under 40% field goal shooting in each of his first 4 games, averaging almost 21 minutes per game. He's only shooting 35% from the field. Three-point line is somewhere around 30%, averaging 14 points per game. Sat out the game against Chicago when the Warriors blew out the Bulls and have gone 1-3 in the games that he's played. The Warriors also have been without Steph Curry and Draymond Green. They've lost 5 of their 7 games, including the game against the Minnesota Timberwolves on Sunday. So, look, I'm not going to sit here and be speaking about Steph Curry and Klay Thompson being the reasons why the Golden State Warriors have scuttled just a bit. Draymond Green had been dealing with a calf injury. That is the biggest loss that's the biggest impalement. That is the biggest obstacle for the Golden State Warriors in terms of them maintaining the level of play and success that they had on the court. Draymond Green being out, and he's going to be out another 2 weeks because of a setback in terms of his rehabilitation with the calf. That's going to be a situation where we really need to look at in terms of, hey man, maybe the Golden State Warriors aren't going to be 72-3 or 73-9 this season. So entering, as we speak about the slow start for Klay Thompson, when you miss almost 1,000 days, of course you're going to be, rusty. Get yourself back into game playing shape. So look, Thompson's never shot worse than 42% in the season. Field goal percentage in a season has not dipped below 47% since the 2015-16 season. And, that's the Klay Thompson that I'm going to be looking forward to watching in terms of him getting better, not just in January, but by the time the playoffs rolls around. And that's really, if you're a Golden State Warrior fan, that's what we're going to be talking about. That's when you're going to need Klay Thompson to be Klay Thompson. And I think the shooting slump that he's in right now is going to be long gone. Same thing with Steph Curry, who's been in the shooting slump. Month of January, 7 games in which the Warriors are 4-3 in the games that he's played in after starting the season 29-6. He's had some bad games, man. He's had some bad shooting games. And so far in January, averaging 19 points per game. He averaged 27 for the month of December, close to 29 in the month of November when everybody was screaming and shouting and dancing on the ceiling like Lionel Richie and dancing in the streets like Martha and the Vandellas about how he was going to be winning the MVP. Well, this month, he's shooting 35% overall, 30% from the three-point line. December, he shot 40%. November, he shot 46%. There was all this scuttlebutt and all this discussion about, in terms of his percentage dipping because of his chase for becoming the all-time three-point shot maker. Well, since then, he really hasn't gotten any better. And we can speak about the injury that might be slowing him down in terms of him being at his optimal best. But still, this month he hadn't shot over 50% in the game. He hadn't shot over 50% in the last 9 games. He shot under 40% from the field in 4 of the last 7 games. So, we're speaking about consecutive games against Miami and Dallas where he was a combined 8 for 40 run from the field and 2 of 19 from the three-point line. So with all of that being said, still think when everything is all said and done, the Golden State Warriors are going to be just fine because despite all of those things I just mentioned, the injury to Draymond, the return of Klay, which is going to throw the rotation just a little bit. It's going to take some time for the new rotation and the new responsibilities for the team. Now, all of a sudden, with Klay Thompson returning, there's going to be less opportunities for Jordan Poole. There's going to be less opportunities for Andrew Wiggins. So those are the situations. There's going to be less minutes. There's going to be less responsibility. So now Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins and Otto Porter and such are going to have to get used and get comfortable with new responsibilities and new roles for their team with the return of the Klay. And there's going to be some growing pains with that. You're going to have to wait for Klay Thompson to get back into basketball shape. Again, this is not a situation where Klay Thompson has missed just 1 season. He's missed over 2. So this is a situation where the Warriors are going to have to be patient, which they will, in terms of getting everything situated in that sense. But still, despite all of these things, again, second best record in the NBA, second best record in the Western Conference, and they've already beaten Phoenix 2 out of 3 times. So what's going to happen when Steph gets back to being Steph? What's going to happen when Klay gets back in terms of getting his NBA playing legs under him? What's it going to be like when the best defender, the most versatile defender, and one of the better playmakers in the NBA this season, Draymond Green, what happened when he comes back and the playoffs start and he's relatively healthy? What is that going to mean for the rest of the Western Conference when, quite frankly, outside of Utah, Golden State, and Phoenix, and Memphis, everyone else has major question marks? Is Luka getting into shape going to be the difference maker? Jalen Brunson's improvement going to continue? Dorian Finney-Smith, is he going to continue to elevate into one of the better two-way players in the game, mainly because of his defense? What are we going to get from Kristaps Porzingis when he comes back? So those are the things in terms of the Western Conference to where, yeah, those are questions, but, right now the Warriors are quote-unquote scuffling, and they still have the second-best record in the league and are 3 games behind the Phoenix Suns. Wendell's World in Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. So glad that you could be with us. Let me just end with this. The Memphis Grizzlies, again, as I mentioned before, are they the Phoenix Suns of the season? They had a franchise record 11-game winning streak snapped on Friday night against Dallas. Luka was really good in that game. It was their 8th game in 12 nights. So, last time I checked, there hasn't been a team in NBA history that's gone 82-0. So, there's been plenty of teams that have won championships who's actually had dynasties, who's actually won 11 championships in 13 years in NBA history that actually lost games during the regular season. Absolutely unbelievable. So the team with the best record of all time, 73-9, they didn't win a championship. They lost to a team that had LeBron James and many more losses. So look, you're going to lose some games. Ja Morant, boy's playing, man. The guy is playing. MVP discussion, especially if you're speaking about the slump with Steph Curry. You're speaking about now KD being out. You're speaking about Nikola Jokic being around 500 with his team. You're speaking about the situation with Joel Embiid in terms of, wow, this team is going to look if they continue not to do anything with Ben Simmons, not trade him, not try to improve their squad to help Joel even more. Right there as of right now, January 18th, 2022, Ja Morant is the guy in terms of who should be having serious consideration for MVP. Now, moving forward, as the season goes on, the second half of the season, who knows? But in terms of MVP, high MVP consideration, top 5 MVP considerations this season, along with Giannis, along with Jokic, along with Curry, along with LeBron, you have to also put in Ja Morant. He's been absolutely fantastic, a leader of this team, and when you take a look at Memphis being legit, now one thing I will say, because they're so deep, and because of their bench, when the playoff comes, they're going to have to shorten that bench. Because for the most part, with the exception of the Isaiah Thomas Detroit Pistons-led team back in the late 80s, NBA champions aren't made by having 10-man rotations in the NBA playoffs or in the NBA championship. So Memphis is going to have to tighten that bench just a little bit. But look, man, Dillon Brooks hasn't even returned to play yet, and Memphis is still doing what they're doing. I think that the series that they had against Utah in the playoffs last season did them well in terms of the momentum that they're having this season. And Ja Morant is playing some really good basketball. And Memphis is now one of the more entertaining teams to watch. Jaren Jackson Jr. has now had a good stretch. We don't know how long he can play before his health declines or he gets another injury. But right now he's doing great. Steven Adams providing the rim protection, providing the muscle, providing the screen setting, providing the all the dirty work that these guys have to do. Slow-mo, Kyle Anderson coming in, doing what he needs to do. Aaron Bain providing what he needs to do. Memphis is for real, man. Memphis is good. Memphis, now, are they as good as Phoenix? Are they as good as Golden State? Time is going to tell on that one. But if they remain relatively healthy and COVID-free once the playoffs start, so game 4 or 5 of the important playoff series that Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant are going to have to miss because they'll be in COVID-19 protocols, if everything is copacetic with that and those guys are relatively healthy, the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be a problem. And again, you take a look at outside of those 4 teams, which I just mentioned, Memphis, Utah, Golden State, and Phoenix, who else is really going to challenge them And no, it ain't going to be the Lakers. Sorry, it ain't going to be the Lakers. So, all right, that's it, man. That's all I've got to say as far as what I'm going to be putting down for Wendell's World in Sports, the YouTube podcast. Again, go ahead, give it a like, give it a subscribe. I've got these videos coming in. Already spoke about what's going down with my Georgetown Hoyas. Gave my tribute to Sidney Poitier, speaking about the NFL playoffs, which I'll dabble a little bit on this platform, also the YouTube channel that I have, speaking about what's happening in the world of sports. So, yeah, man, Wendell's World in Sports. Be safe, be good, be wonderful to each other. Treat each other as you would like to be treated. Remember, treat each other in terms of judge people by who they are as human beings, the character of who they are, the fiber of who they are as people, not by the color of their skin, not by their gender, not by their financial background, not by what part of the world they live in, not by their political affiliation, not by the person that they love, not by the God they worship, if they worship a God at all. Take people, respect people, love people, harmonize with people of goodness, love, peace, and unity. Wendell's World of Sports. I'm your host, Wendell Wallace. Somebody please hit me the music.